Guilty, 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 guilty. The Tom Girardi trial is finally over. The man who once stood at the pinnacle of legal power in California and arguably around the country now faces the rest of his life in prison. This is Predator in Plain Sight, exposing Tom Girardi. I'm Chris Hansen, and I'm here with my co-host, Kimberly Archie. Kimberly, it was quite a moment. We suspected this strong case would yield convictions. You were in the courtroom. Your reaction as someone who knows Girardi, who has worked with Girardi, and who is very experienced in this part of the legal world. Were you surprised by anything?
No, I was not surprised per se by the verdict, although I wasn't going to believe it until I literally heard it in the courtroom. Probably the biggest surprise is I thought I would feel really relieved and maybe even some sort of happiness, but it was actually just a really sad moment and a culmination of disappointment of finding out who Tom Girardi really is.
When you look at this case, the big picture, here's a guy who's had 205 complaints against him for this sort of financial mismanagement, criminal activity filed with the California Bar Association. He's been getting away with this for a long time. And yes, he's now convicted. But you have to wonder, how did it come to this? How did he get away with it for nearly 20 years?
Well, I think that goes to his relationships with politicians, with the California bar, with law enforcement and law enforcement at the highest levels. Girardi was a protected kingpin, as Kathy Ragomez described him on the stand, and other people who testified used similar type of mob boss descriptions. And really, he was a devil in disguise.
And Kimberly, speaking of victims of Tom Girardi, joining us in this episode, Josie Hernandez and Danny Barnes, both of whom went to Tom Girardi for his legal experience, to get justice, to be compensated for the wrongs they suffered, only to be victimized again. Josie, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Is this vindication? Is this justice? How do you describe this verdict to you?
Well, I feel very similar to what Kimberly mentioned. At the end of the day, it's still a sad, sad situation. It's definitely a great stepping stone, but there's a lot more to be done.
Do you feel that this trial gave you a voice and allowed you to get your story out there and to at least let people know what Tom Girardi did to you?
I believe so. I'm very comfortable with the information that's out there now. The truth is out. We are no longer alleged victims. We are no longer possible liars in the eyes of the Erika Jayne, how she mentioned us in prior broadcasts of the Beverly Hills show. So it is now confirmed, and it's vindication for the four victims that were on this trial, but there's so many more victims that need justice as well. So I believe that until every single person gets vindication and their day in court, there's just so much more to do.
Do you
Danny Barnes also speaking out for the first time since the verdict. Danny's still battling cancer, exposed to chemicals while on the job at Lockheed. Danny, does this make you feel any better about the way you were treated by Tom Girardi?
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to be on you guys' platform. Yes, I do feel better. But as both of these young ladies said, it's sad um, because now you're just basically thinking about all of the atrocities and the pain and suffering that everybody had to suffer and go through. Um, we are, it's no longer like she was saying, there's no more allegations. It's confirmed. So the jury was able to get it right. But we thank God for that. Our next door neighbors got it right. That's the jury. So I do feel better.
Kimberly, one of the prosecutors described this case in court as Robin Hood in reverse. This was the guy who was already wealthy and stole from victims to make himself even wealthier. You agree with that?
I think it's a fairly good description, although I don't really think that it does, justice to how evil he really was. When I hear the word Robin Hood in reverse, it just doesn't really touch on, the depths of the evil that Tom perpetrated on his victims in their darkest moments of their lives. And when they would call and email and reach out and beg for their money from this man, he was merciless to them and didn't care what they were going through. Erica Saldana made it very clear that they had an injured son who had special needs. They needed to adapt their home. They were living in an apartment caring for a paralyzed young child and not able to make the changes to their home to accommodate him. There were people who were homeless, who were having major struggles with health and could have been able to afford better medical treatment had he given them their money. So I would say it goes deeper even than the reverse Robin Hood. I mean, he's the devil of all devils.
This money, and now the evidence has been presented in court, very strong evidence, forensically, emotionally, direct evidence. This money that was supposed to go to people like Josie and Danny and the others went for private jets, ritzy country clubs, a lavish lifestyle, and jewelry to Erika Jayne, and also the funding of her so-called career. It is just shocking when you think about how this trust fund, this legal trust account at Girardi Keese was handled. He was using this like his own personal piggy bank in the most atrocious way, Kimberly.
Yeah, his public defenders try to portray that since it was a sole proprietorship, since Tom was the owner, it would be okay for him to just take money out of the client trust account and use it because, well, what? Is it just like a technicality that he didn't earn it because he was stealing from his victims? You just can't use a client trust account like a piggy bank, as Scott Patey, one of the prosecutors said in the trial. It's just not allowed. You must remove your fees and put it into your operating account and then pay yourself and then spend the money. Those are the proper steps that have to be taken. It's not optional. They also tried to portray that Tom put all these tens of millions of dollars back. And I've seen Bravo podcasters jumping on this narrative in some type of defense of Erica and her spouse, Tom Girardi. But let's look at it like this. You can't make dirty money clean. This is a Ponzi scheme. He's putting back old dirty money that he stole. You don't earn any legal fees. The minute you steal money from a client, you no longer earn those fees. That's one of the things people haven't seemed to wrap their head around yet. Josie Hernandez is still owed her legal fees from her case. She has not received those back. Why would she owe Girardi Keese or the estate a dime?
Josie, when you would contact Tom Girardi to ask about your settlement, to ask about your money, what were you told? How were you treated?
Basically, just been I was given the runaround every single time. There was never a concrete answer from anyone. They would just maybe refer me to somebody else. Eventually I did get some type of correspondence from his legal secretary, but that in itself didn't do or give me any type of closure because they kept referring to an issue with my previous bankruptcy that was supposedly not settled, but it was very much settled. And my uh, settlement was all of the amounts, all of the liens were cleared, and everything was ready to go. So even I knew that at the very end that something was just not right.
And Josie, what does Tom Girardi still owe you?
He owes me. There's I besides monetary,
Yeah.
he owes me an apology. I think that he more than anything, he owes me an apology. Um, he just literally focused on himself and his wife and their life of luxury and just completely forgot about everyone else that was suffering. And I'm not going to say that my case was the worst, but because it wasn't, but it's still I think that he owes me an apology and he needs to make a statement to all of the people that he hurt and that he, did wrong. And hopefully something comes out of this.
Danny Barnes, did Tom Girardi ever make an attempt to settle up with you, to give you what he owes you?
Never. No. I would call. I would have to call for years and years and years, literally, and constantly ask for a loan. Then, in asking for the loan, we'd have to wait several weeks, and it would just be kibbles in bits.
And what were you told, Danny? What excuse were you given?
Well, like Josie said, basically the runaround. We have money. More cases are going to settle, and just wait and hold on. But it was terrible, like Kimberly said. So I was in a position where I was actually begging for my money.
You
Because I had
had
a
to
family.
beg for money. Danny, you had to beg for money that was legally yours.
Absolutely, I did. And by the way, I just want to interject that when you talk about the complaints that we did with the bar, you have to remember, and if you look at the dockets, that like 125 complaints were filed before the, 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 the last 75 complaints. So from 91, I would say, to about 2015 or 17, we had filed, there were over 125 complaints lodged with the state bar. And I would think that at least 60 of those, if not maybe more, was from the Lockheed litigation. So he was doing this, Josie, Kimberly, Chris, he was doing this back in the 90s, coming all the way up. Yeah.
And as
So
we speak now, Danny, what does Girardi owe you?
at least, I would estimate it, I would say at least 2 million plus.
And do you think you'll ever see that, Danny?
Uh, how do I answer that? I would like to try and see that. Uh, don't know if we will, but I do not believe that the money, the millions upon millions of dollars that have been stolen from us as a whole has disappeared. I think that it is somewhere. So I would at
And,
least like to think that we receive some of it.
and when you see video of Tom Girardi and Erika Jayne living this extravagant lifestyle funded by the millions of dollars you were supposed to get because you were victimized in a workplace scenario, in a
Yes.
situation that led to you having cancer. When you see this, what goes through your mind?
A lot of events. I believe that all of us, when I was there at the trial, all of us are suffering from post-traumatic stress. I could wrestle. I will speak for myself. I was reminded of all the atrocities and some of my coworkers that were suffering and, eventually died. I also received phone calls from them for the first time. So, uh, it's sad. And I just might add, you know, how can you really receive an apology from an extreme personification of whatever we think the devil is? This guy fits the bill. For whatever you could have imagined that evil is, he fits the bill. Okay. I'll say this really quick. I can remember just being a law student, asking the defendant, how do you represent these big corporations? They have no feelings, no emotions. And a lot of times they're wrong. Well, with Girardi, you see the flip side of that. You see a plaintiff attorney dealing with injured people at their most vulnerable place in life and completely, totally taking advantage of them, like a serial rapist or something, to injured people.
It's sociopathic, if not psychopathic.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And now there's a conviction to back it up. Kimberly, do we have any sense if there is any money anywhere that can be recovered to compensate people like Josie, Danny, Kathy Gomez, and so many others?
And that's a really tough question to answer because it's been now 4 years since the bankruptcy was filed, tens of millions of dollars that, was brought into the bankruptcy has primarily given in shared lawyer fees with Tom's former partners and other co-counsel that did this with him, and with the legal lenders who fed the Ponzi scheme to keep it going. He used legal lending to fill in the gaps when he didn't bring in enough money to pay, past clients with new client money. So these legal lenders were really an integral part of Girardi's Ponzi scheme. And then we have the banks who have so far got off scot-free. We heard in the trial how Tom wanted software that would allow the trust account to be at a negative balance, to start at a negative balance. That's not allowed. There wasn't software available that did that because you were never supposed to do it. So why would the software company create that feature, right? So, to me, I'm hoping that his guilty conviction on these charges will open, Pandora's box for the feds to dig into this deeper and to look at the legal lenders and the banks and get into these deep pockets so that the victims can actually be paid. There are hundreds of victims listed in bankruptcy claims, and there's probably thousands of victims that have not been identified. And we have not reconciled Girardi Keese's books. So we don't know the way he moved the money, who got what, when, where, and how yet. We only know pieces of that puzzle so far.
And we don't know if he's got a slush fund or a Swiss bank account or money stashed away in the Caymans or someplace else. We just don't know.
Well, and conveniently, Erica's not living in the giant mansion that they were in and not, doesn't have the option of the two private jets to jump on. But she is still driving a Range Rover and living in a $9,500 a month, rental, and seems to have gotten her glam squad back to some degree and was able to, put on this so-called show in Las Vegas. So who's funding Erica? I mean, they say it's this guy, Jim Wilkes, who's a friend of Tom's, who was an elder abuse lawyer, by the way. And in my discussions with him, I learned clearly what Tom Girardi's defense was going to be in the criminal trial. And guess what? I learned nothing new in the trial about his defense because I had already heard all these stories from, Erica's benefactors. So I don't know, is he randomly paying for Erica's stuff because he feels bad for her, as he's told us? Or is there something more sinister behind this? I think that's a good question to ask.
Kimberly, you have the trial transcripts for Tom Girardi's testimony. And let's start there because it seemed unusual that they would put him on the stand. Now, again, maybe not so much because he's supposed to be suffering from dementia. He's supposed to not be aware of his surroundings, although we saw him consulting with his defense counsel and we saw him, say things and take great interest in certain other testimony. What do you think was the most significant part of Girardi being on the stand?
Well, I think it being confirmation that he's the ultimate narcissist and he really believes that he was the greatest trial lawyer that ever lived and that he could get on there and fool this jury into believing that he wasn't capable of doing this, that he didn't do this, and that he's the ultimate, persuasion king, obviously by the guilty verdicts and by the words of one of the jurors who spoke with the media. He said it was an easy decision. It wasn't difficult for the jury to come to this conclusion. They took the hours that they did to deliberate to make sure that they were dotting their I's and crossing their T's. And I think they did that out of respect for the legal system, the judge, and the victims, to make sure they were, following the process, correctly. As far as Tom getting, on the stand, I mean, I thought that his attorneys would somehow be able to stop him from doing it. Not that I didn't think he'd want to do it. I just thought they would stop him because it's never a good idea in a situation like this. It really did him no good. And so I think it also speaks to that he's delusional and mentally ill. And I'm sure he didn't use the insanity plea because you have to cop to, all the bad facts in order to plead insanity. So I think they went with this route instead because, it'd be easier for an 80 something year old guy to play dementia than crazy.
You could, Kimberly, you have the transcripts in front of you. What jumps out at you?
I mean, there's like some patterns in here that I think are interesting. In the very beginning of the cross examination, by Ali Magadas, he says, "Good morning" to Girardi. And he says, "How are you?" And Girardi says, "I don't know. That's up to you, I think." And Ali Magadas says, "Why is it up to me, sir?" And he says, "You've got to be nice." And he replies, "I'm always nice." That's kind of a theme we heard in the voicemails and in the letters that he sent to clients, be nice to me. I'm a nice guy. I mean, that's just it's very on brand for Tom. And then, also just when he's asked about the Regomez family. And of course he remembers Joe, and he says, "You saw Mr. Joseph Regomez come here and testify." "Yes." "And you saw his mother, Kathleen, come and testify, right?" "Yes." "And you heard them talk about the millions of dollars that you got from them from their PG&E settlement. Do you remember that?" "No, I do." Sir, you remember that Joseph Gomez, he was involved in that explosion, right? That nearly killed him? Of course. And you settled that case on behalf of the Gomez's for 53 million, right, sir? It was a lot of money. I don't know. But you heard them testify that when they showed up to the mediation, you told them the amount was actually 5 million. Do you remember that? I don't. Again, just example of he can remember what was convenient for him and he forgot what was, bad for him. And I think the jury clearly saw through those shenanigans.
This is a man who was at the top of the legal world in California for many, many years. And now, whether he's actually suffering from dementia or whether it's a big hoax designed to get him out from under all this, his life's not great. He faces 20 years in prison per each of the 4 counts. He's 85 years old. He gets sentenced on December 6th. It'll be interesting to see what the judge ultimately says here. And he's not out of the woods even after that, because he's got a case in Chicago and he's got a lot of legal trouble in front of him. This isn't over, is it, Kimberly?
No, I think this is, it's just begun. We heard from IRS special investigator Ryan Roberson in his testimony that there are target letters out there for former Girardi Keys partners, and he named 4 of them. Keith Griffin, who a lot of people have heard about because he's connected to the Lion Air case. David Lira, who's Tom's son-in-law and also, indicted on the Chicago case as well. And Robert Finnerty, who some people may have heard because that's who the Gomez's are now in litigation with, involving, money that stemmed from their original settlement at Girardi Keys. And then Chris Ame, who some people may have not heard his name, but he's involved in very big cases from Girardi Keys, like the Brian Stowe case, the Giants fan who got beat up at Dodger Stadium, the NFL concussion case that most people have heard about. A ghost ship where 36 people lost their lives, and Girardi Keys represented 3 wrongful deaths. Those people are missing their money to this day. They're creditors in the bankruptcy. So I think, target letters from the feds is very serious. That means that they believe they have evidence to charge you with the crime. And I think that the fact that we heard Martin Estrada, who, was the head of this investigation of the IRS and the FBI and the Department of Justice, he said, there's been tens of millions of dollars taken from victims. They had to prove a fraud scheme in order to prove Tom's intent to steal from the 4 clients that were in the case. So that means they're going to be looking into it further, what this greater fraud scheme was, who helped do it, and who's responsible civilly and criminally. So I think that, it's been a long time coming, 40 years, 4 years since the bankruptcy, 4 years it's been out there in the Bravo world in front of Bravo fans and the legal community paying attention. But I think this is day one that the rest of the country is learning about who Tom Girardi is, what he did to his clients, and a system that allowed him to do it. We need a reckoning with the California bar, the politicians, the lawmakers, the California Supreme Court, the governor, the head of the Judicial Committee, and the Assembly and the Senate in California. They're responsible for the bar. They did this. And when are they going to be held accountable? That's what's on deck right now. And the victims aren't going to stop until we get there.
Danny Barnes,
Yes.
how would it change your life if you were made whole, if you got the money owed to you by Tom Girardi?
Oh my God. I would be able to get proper treatment for the cancer that I'm going through. They have a lot of hopeful treatments, but again, that costs tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Uh, that would really help the situation. And of course, uh, it would make life better. We were robbed, okay? And like Kimberly said, now we have to begin to look at the system that's partially that's broken, that's beginning to stand up. And I always say that the law is uh, is as good as the people that are representing it. And that's where we're at right now. We're at the politicians that listen, this guy was a major donor to political parties all the way back from the 90s. When you're looking at a guy having parties on sales ships and you're struggling, being pushed out of your home, losing your home, and you're diving into poverty, waiting for to be paid, and you're never being paid, that's an issue. You could go after also, he didn't do this alone. You have Brian Gonzalez, Kerry Ryan, Timothy Larson. When you mention Robert Trinity, those names pop right back up at me because you're out there now advertising to the public that, hey, I was a guy, I was with Tom Girardi, and I handled every aspect of the Lockheed litigation. Well, if you did, then you're just as guilty as he was.
Danny, do you think your money is out there someplace?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think all of our money is. Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
And Josie, how would it impact your life if you were made whole, if you got everything you were supposed to get when you were supposed to get it?
Well, maybe my marriage wouldn't have failed. Maybe my mental health, my anxiety, everything that I went through, primarily due to the device, the issue that we originally sued for, it just was, uh, you know, multiplied that by a million times with what Girardi did to us. So the money would definitely help me and my kids start fresh. In addition, I have no health insurance now because of my divorce. I don't have that. And health insurance is expensive. So I'm unable to get the medical treatment that I need for all of the issues that came about because of the medical device. And it just seems like it's been a domino effect ever since. And I'm just waiting to get off this roller coaster, to be honest. I just want to put this behind me, but I can't do it. I can't do it yet.
And you were victimized twice, the medical device, and then by
Correct.
the very man who is supposed to help you
Correct.
get some measure of justice here and compensation for the suffering you endured.
Correct. Yes. So it's like Danny said, we're all suffering from PTSD because of this. We put all our hopes and promises that this man gave to us, and we got absolutely nothing but heartache and devastation. And
And to top it all off, you have to see him, or at least historically over the last, several years, see him and his wife, Erika Jayne, live this lavish life on the money that was supposed to go to you and your family.
exactly. That's
It's like being triple victimized here.
exactly. That is exactly what it is. You
Joe,
know,
are you surprised not to see any statement from Erica or any kind of admission that her comments about the victims, were incorrect. Are you surprised not to hear anything from her?
No,
Your thoughts?
I'm not surprised at all. Erica is out for Erica. Erica only cares about Erica. She only cares about her career and whatever she's got going on. She doesn't care about anything that happened prior to you know, her separation or so-called divorce. I don't know what she's doing, but no, I nothing that she does surprises me. It's like she has no soul. She
Mm.
doesn't have any feelings, remorse, or any type of compassion, even if how she claims that she had played no part in it, but she knew she did because she received a lot of money for her career that went absolutely nowhere.
Right.
Her biggest role to me in all of this is putting out a narrative to the general public for years that Tom was incompetent, even using those exact words, incompetent. What layperson with the high school diploma uses the word incompetent to describe a loved one? That's your husband. And if he literally had dementia and you left him when he couldn't remember who people were, what kind of person are you? Even if he was doing something wrong. You see people's mothers sit in the courtroom during a murder trial, okay? Loved ones still stick by family. And we didn't see Erika in the courtroom supporting Tom. And until the last day, I didn't see either one of his brothers, Robert or Jack, but I did see them on the last day for a little while.
Danny, it would seem that Erika Jayne has paid absolutely no price, suffered not one bit for any of this. Her life has largely gone on like nothing ever happened.
Right.
You okay
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah. No, I'm not. I believe that we will see as we keep pondering beating the trail that she definitely was involved uh, with uh, with 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 covering up the money. She knows where some of it is at. Uh, we just have to take a different legal angle to get to it. But they just brought up some real good examples. What wife is going to leave their husband that's been so great to them uh, in a place now where he has his mind, he has dementia. They don't have they don't have a soul. They don't care. And so uh, we're believing that she will be brought to bear at the appropriate time.
Kimberly, this raises a very interesting question and one that I ponder as we've gone through this case. Is it possible that without Erika Jayne's notoriety or the incredible popularity of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, that without that, this entire fraud, this litany of crimes committed by Tom Girardi would have ever been uncovered?
I think it's a very good question. And if you believe the theory that, Tom's partners, including his, head of accounting or bookkeeper, I refuse to call Chris Camone a CFO. That's just ridiculous. But if you believe the theory that Chris Camone and the partners got frustrated after seeing Erica spend millions and millions of dollars, seeing Erica get more of a cut from the criminal enterprise than they were, and they started doing their own double dipping and dirty deeds and whatnot, and doing things like Robert Finnerty going to the legal lenders. Zimmerman testified in the trial that Robert Finnerty came up to him and told him that Tom had spent the money that he was supposed to pay back to a legal lender, and that's the legal lender who sued and really, put everyone on notice that something really bad was going on at Girardi Keys financially. So I think those are, if you believe those theories, I would say yes.
And Chris Camone goes on trial for his role in all this in January, and he's facing serious charges, Kimberly.
And I think people are going to follow that trial closely. We saw a little peek into his ex fiance who testified in Tom's trial, and she was a fairly colorful character, so to speak. And so was Mr. Bravo, who owned Bravo Construction, which is also kind of ironic with the whole, with
Sure
the
is.
Bravo fans always say, everything's like 1 degree of separation from Bravo. Everything leads to Bravo. So we even have Bravo Construction in that trial. And that guy came in, with a plaid shirt and a cowboy hat and greeting everybody like you're walking into a regular room and not a courtroom. He was quite the character. So I have a feeling that that trial is going to garner a lot of attention and will continue to build the momentum onto the March 3rd, 2025 trial of the Lion Air crash. And of course, Edelson was co-counsel in that case in Chicago. He's been one of the few lawyers, who have tried to speak out against the plaintiff's bar. And I would be shocked if Edelson doesn't capitalize on the huge PR opportunity that that criminal trial will bring. So I think this is going to continue to build steam in the eye of the public, and hopefully it'll be fruitful for the victims to see the change that everybody so badly wants to see, to know that their pain wasn't for nothing, that them coming forward and suffering through this over and over again, re-triggering their PTSD to either testify in this trial or participate in the media surrounding it to get the word out, that won't be for nothing once again.
Right.
It'll
Right.
actually be a change.
In cases like this, when it comes time for sentencing, often victims are given the opportunity to give what is called a victim's impact statement. Josie, if you could give a short statement now as to the impact of this on you, what would you say?
Well, at this point, I would say, you made a promise. Maybe I didn't meet with you initially, but I hired your firm because of you, because of your um, history with fighting for the underdog. I trusted your firm. I went based on your reputation, and I believed wholeheartedly you were going to fight and get me as much as I possibly could to rebuild my life and help me support my family in every which way. And you failed me. You lied to me. Your greed was so unbelievably over the top. I've never met anybody like that. The evil that you sustain in your body is just crazy. It's just unbelievable to me. And the fact that you could do this to so many people over and over and over and not care and not blink an eye about it. All I have to say to Mr. Girardi is that I hope that he, for lack of a better term, rots in jail. I hope that he really is denied any of the human decency that we were denied. And, and I hope all of his conspirators are going to join him soon.
Danny Barnes, how would
Yeah.
you craft your victim impact statement?
Mr. Girardi, you are denied any sympathy or empathy because of the continuous and continuing crime that you committed against humanity. The pain, the harm, the atrocity, you have tore down a family legacy in regards to monies, relationships destroyed in regards to monies that owed me. You should at least have the decency right now to tell us the rest of the attorneys, the people that were involved. And I believe that you should get the full extent of what your crimes have been. That would be my statement.
Kimberly, sentencing is coming up, scheduled for December 6th. Is it possible, knowing everyone in this case as you do, knowing the legal system as you do, that Girardi somehow cooperates, looking for a better sentence, helps the feds prosecute other cases, helps find money, funds hidden someplace, and then second, given this alleged mental state of his, is he even capable of doing it?
I'll address the second question first. Is Tom capable of helping? Absolutely. You know, I heard people respond to some of his testimony where he said he didn't recognize his lawyers. You know, if you believe that bullshit, I've got oceanfront property in Arizona to sell everybody really cheap. I'm not buying any of it. The guy is a master, manipulator. So could Girardi help? Hell yes. Will he? Hell no. He's not going to do anything. He's never going to admit it. That's why he couldn't stand himself to not get on the stand and tell people, I never stole any money. I never lied to the Gomez's. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm a good guy. I'm great. I could have never done this, yada, yada, yada. He's going to continue to sing that song. And, Erika Jayne is going to continue to pat the puss and give no fucks. And that's really where I see Girardi and Erika.
You'd have to think, though, that he would do whatever he thought was necessary to keep himself from going to prison. This is a guy who's not going to do well in prison, even if he goes to a facility within a federal prison for elderly inmates who need medical care. This is not going to the special care facility in which he now resides.
He'll
This
never
is
see a
different.
day in jail, in prison.
You don't think so?
No, he'll appeal it. He'll drag it out. He's 85 years old. And if for some reason he doesn't die by natural causes prior to, being remanded to custody, I think that he would take his own life before he would ever spend one day behind bars. But that's just, it's my opinion.
So you think he'd take a Dr. Kevorkian cocktail before he ever reported to the Bureau of Federal Prisons?
Yes, I do.
What has this trial, this case, taught us all, Kimberly? I mean, obviously, there's so much to take away from this. The corruption of a system that allowed Girardi to get away with this for 20 years. The celebrity horror spectacle that led to the exposure of this in some ways. The horrific victimization of people like Danny and Josie and Kathy Rogomez, the Rogomez family, and so many others. It's going to take a while before we can even get our arms around this and hope that it leads to some measure of justice for the victims and some reform for the system that allowed this to take place.
Well, my vote or my energy is always on the victims. I believe in the victims. I believe in their ability in spite of what they've been through, to be able to channel their pain into purpose and make a difference, not just for themselves, but for society and humanity at large. We owe them, a big thank you for what they've gone through in order to make an example out of Tom Girardi and Girardi Keese as a law firm, because this is going to make society better. Our society is built on a just legal system. This is beyond important. This is not a sidebar, side note, sideline type of thing. This is front and center as an important aspect of a functioning society.
Well, I think we can all agree there is much more to come here and many more questions that need to be answered. But for now, Kimberly, thank you so much. Danny, Josie, thank you for joining us. We're all going to stay on top of this story and look forward to updating you as best we can as things develop. But it's just been an amazing experience. I've covered, Kimberly, the legal system for 40 some years as a reporter. And I can tell you this, I've never seen a case like this. And I agree with you. This is so important that this is followed through on so many different levels for
Yes.
for the integrity of the legal system in California and elsewhere, and for justice for Danny, for you, and Josie, for you, and so many others. So bless you all. Thank you all for your being so indefatigable and intrepid. And I wish you, as good a health as you can possibly get.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Well,
we absolutely appreciate you. I just want to interject one thought. And I have seen in the past where you have criminals on this level or that does the same thing, where the prosecutor, upon sentencing, they give them the time, but they also give them a deal and say, hey, if you go find some of this money, we could knock down a few years. Just wanted to interject that.
And I don't think anybody would be opposed to that, Danny. I honestly believe that. We'll see if that actually happens.
Right.
My co-host, Kimberly, Archie, thank you as always. We will be in touch on this and get back with all of you listening with any major developments as this case proceeds. But for now, I'm Chris Hansen with Kimberly, Archie, and this is Predator in Plain Sight, exposing Tom Girardi.